Well, good evening. Happy Shabat to one and all. Almost Shabat to you on the leftist coast, but for the rest of us, the sun has set, and it is another glorious Shabat. Hello, Kirk. Welcome to Yada Yahowah Radio. How are you?
Good evening.
I guess you're melting there in the People's Republic of California.
Yes,
I understand
yes.
it. Yeah,
it's a little warm. It's a little warm.
Yeah, it's warm here too. It ratcheted up from 85 to 86 today. So, we're in the middle of the blinding heat of summer. Here in the middle of the Caribbean, when you're in the middle of a pond this large, the temperatures just don't change much from winter to summer or from day to night. It's going to get really chilly tonight. I think it's going to get down to about 78 by the time we reach midnight. So it can roar back to about, 85 tomorrow.
We'll send blankets.
Yeah, so please, yes. Oh, with the nice trade winds, it is lovely. In fact, I'm glad we're talking about this because the statement that we ended the program last week, because we're reading from Yeshaya 42, says that the stem that Yahweh has brought forth has been mistreated, and that he's been harassed. And since there don't seem to be any other candidates for this Towrah stem sucker, then what we're doing here, I would have to tell you that I certainly do not feel mistreated. Listen, having a 17-page cover story in a national periodical that besmirches one's character without getting a single thing right, that wasn't a whole lot of fun, but that was long ago, faraway kingdom, and clearly, what we have to say does not garner a lot of friends. You're not going to find any support in the conspiratorial, the religious, or the political sectors of society, which would include about 99.9% of people. And it is true that there are lots and lots of people online that find their jollies by, stealing my translations and insights and transliterations and claiming them for themselves and then being critical of me. So maybe the reason I don't feel harassed is that I don't bother to look at all the numbskulls out there. But there are lots of them. You can even go to the Black Hebrew Roots or Black Israelite movement, and you will find that these numbskulls are actually using my transliterations and translations, and they're promoting religious myths that are completely inconsistent with Yahweh. Of course, they're doing it for profit, and we have run afoul of lots of political and religious conspiracy advocates that we've really had to work very hard to disassociate with, who once we told people what we really thought of them and what God thinks of them, became quite belligerent. So perhaps there is a mistreatment. It's just that I certainly I'm not bothered by it. So when I read it, I'm saying, oh, come on, this is the best job in the world. I've got the best life in the world. I married the most wonderful person in the world. I even have cool dogs. I mean, my world is great. So it's the best job in the world. Here with my Asher and my Wookiee and my Leia. What is this about being harassed? But nonetheless, that's what the prophecy said, and you can certainly justify it. It says, the mistreated stem which has been extended, the Kanat Ra'at, harassed branch and ill-treated shoot which has been brought forth, will never cease. Well, that part's true. Be harmed or suffer. That's also true, and maybe that's the juxtaposition of things that, okay, so you're getting constantly attacked by the conspiratorial, by the religious, by the political, and elsewhere. So that is true, but yet you're never going to cease. You're never going to be harmed. You're never going to suffer. Never going to be touched. Never broken. Never destroyed. nor will his confidence or courage. And Kirk, we've known each other for a long time, and we've spent a fair amount of time together, even breaking bread together in various times in our lives.
Yeah.
And
a lot of laughing.
So you know what it's like to spend a day with me, and how I spend 10 hours a day doing the translating and writing, and my overall attitude things. And my guess is your conclusion would be, the way that he sounds on this program, the way he comes across in those books, pretty consistent with the way he is in person.
I think you're an awfully nice fellow too.
Well, yeah, of course. Very nice for you to say. The check is in the mail.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
a little tight out here.
I will double your program salary for that.
Hot dog.
Hot dog. This restoring and glowing wick. It says, this restoring and glowing wick, he will not allow to be quenched. He, of course, is Yahweh. When you're compared to someone that is, as Yahweh speaks of Dod, saying that he is as the sun, that when he returns, he's going to look like the sun. To be compared to that as this glowing wick, it does put things in perspective, which I sort of like. For a moment you get, hey, wow, the glowing wick really that Yahweh's not going to allow to be quenched, and you say, hey, that's pretty cool. But you just want to keep things. Yeah, you just want to keep things into context.
Perspective, yeah.
Yes. Dod is coming back as the sun, and here we are as a glowing wick. Hey,
I thought about that. That's funny.
We at least are glowing. We are not faltering.
We have a wick.
And the boss is not going to allow us to be snuffed out or extinguished. And when you consider the amount of illumination on Yahweh's words between now and the time that Dod returns, being a wick is a pretty good thing. I'm not sure there's much else going on. He will reliably and truthfully, steadfastly bring forth and disseminate the means to make an informed and rational decision. That is what we're all about, really.
Yes, sir.
We're committed, and we have been for the last 21 years. Provide the information as accurately, as consistently, as dependably. I even like verifiably, which is part of Emeth. This is Hula Emeth. Because we're doing this in a way that you can verify everything we're saying. We have laid all of our cards on the table. It's not only that we give you the basis of the translation so that you can look up the word for yourself and to see, does the word actually mean what we're saying? But we'll do a running commentary and say, I understand there's a lot that the other people translate this differently, and they say this, and we say this, for these reasons, and this is our thinking on the history of this particular word and what it might mean. There's no one else doing that. So we make the translations easily verifiable. We work very hard to be transparent so that we admit when we don't know, and we also make ourselves vulnerable, which I think is a really important aspect of earning trust, by saying these things are related, therefore we can conclude that, for example, that Yah was going to return on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, which is October 2nd, 2033. So we'll go out there and say these conclusions can be drawn for these reasons, and we're not afraid to put it on the line.
Put it on the line, yeah,
and put it in writing, which so few people are willing to do. So many people want to have this talking head thing where they get a low cost webcam and they show themselves rattling on about this, that, or the other thing. It's so much more effective, but also vulnerable, easily verified if your communication is in writing. And everything we're saying, you can look up. We're currently communicating out of volume think this is volume 7, or the last chapter of volume 7
it is.
of Yada Yahowah. It's hard for me to remember sometimes because of the fact that I'm now, I think, 7 chapters into volume 8. I sent you, Kirk, volume 8.
Yes,
Volume 8 is the most
Thank you.
emotionally charged translation we have conveyed thus far. It's based principally on Hosea, and it does not present God's people, Yisrael, in a very favorable light. That's the Department of Understatement. Anyway, it says that this individual, this glowing wick, will be reliable, trustworthy, and steadfast. He's going to be as honest as he is capable, dependable, verifiable, and he's going to perpetually bring forth and disseminate Yatsa. Yatsa is such a powerful term. It's the basis of the concept of Exodus. It means to extend or to withdraw, to come forth with, the means to make an informed and rational decision. This is mishpat. Mishpat is one of the 3 or 4 most important concepts in the Torah. Mishpat is one of those words that I just remain amazed that after 2,000 or 3,000 years of scholarship, that we're the first to say these words are easily understandable because they're clearly a compound. And there is no one that would question that mishpat is based on shafat.
Correct.
And shafat means to decide, to exercise good judgment, to make a rational decision based upon evidence is to shafat. A shafat is a judge, someone who can make a rational decision. The M-I is from my. And my in Hebrew is one of the most common interrogatives. My and ma are the 2 most common, and although there are 5 or 6 interrogatives in Hebrew. Hebrew is different than English. It's actually superior than English. In English, you do not know something's a question until you see the question mark at the end of the sentence. But you have to know it's a question before you get to the end of the sentence, because the inflection to read a question is different than the inflection when you're reading a statement. But you don't know it's a question until you get to the end of the statement. That's really not a very good way to do things. In Hebrew, the interrogatory, the basis of or introduction of a question, something to ponder, to consider, to try to analyze and ascertain the intent, is always presented as the first word of the statement. So ma or me would be presented in Hebrew to say what is being presented is being posed as a question so that you can consider the implications of this and seek answers. So in this case, it is my shafat. My shafat would mean to ponder the implications, the who, what, where, why, and how of making an informed and rational decision. Just what we did right there in explaining the word helps you make a good decision. This is the essence of it. I don't think there's anything that you could say, God could say, it's God speaking here, that would be more descriptive of what we've intended to accomplish these last 20 years than this. To reliably, truthfully, steadfastly, honestly, verifiably bring forth and disseminate the means to make an informed and rational decision regarding God. We have demonstrated that God wants us to think our way to Him. Doesn't care what you believe, doesn't care what you put your faith in. He wants you to know, to yada, to be and understand, so that you can decide whether or not you want to answer His invitations and engage in His covenant. And you can only do that when you're presented accurate and verifiable information and then you exercise good judgment regarding it. That statement, by the way, was presented to us by Yeshaya, Isaiah, and it's in the 42nd chapter, the third statement. So Yahweh has a lot to say about this episode in the lives of his people. And this is preceding his return, when he is trying to inform them so they can make a quality decision about how they wish to address him upon his return. It is literally now or never for the chosen people. Even with the luxury of time, 3,000 years since the previous kingdom of Dode, God could not find a single solitary Jew who would listen to him. So, Kirk, I understand you finally took the old spit test, and
I did.
You found that you are as goyim can be.
I'm afraid so. I had high hopes there'd be something there, but no.
Yeah, you like me. I don't have even a nuance of Jewishness in me. I mean, I will tell you that when it comes to Yisrael, an individual who engages and endures with God, or Yahudah, the beloved of Yah, I think that that's how God views us. And that's what we strive to be. And we live, we work on behalf of Yisrael and Yahudah. But ethnically, we're both mutts.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah, speaking of mutts, they wouldn't consider themselves that, of course, but today's program is being promoted in social media in Spain. So we hope that you listen well now. Yes, now, Spain is an interesting place as it relates to the chosen people, and that they were both treated well and treated poorly. There was a very brief period of time where Jews were actually treated decently in Spain, but for the most part, they were treated as the Roman Catholic Church treated them throughout time. In fact, it was the Inquisition in Spain that caused most Jews to leave. The Inquisition in Spain, promoted by the Roman Catholic Church, was probably as brutal against Jews as any period up to, but not including, the pogroms in the Ukraine or the Holocaust. So it's a rough go there for Jews, and those are the people that we care most about. So God is telling his people that, I'm going to use this glowing wick to convey this information, because quite frankly, none of you were available to me. And so now between Chag Matzah and Teruah, as we are broadcasting here in 2022, only 11 orbits of the sun, 11 years, it'll wax poetic sometimes,
very good.
that before Jews see the light, God is encouraging them to listen. So with reconciliations rapidly approaching, Yahweh wants, this sounds strong, but he actually needs to get Yisrael's undivided attention. And what better way than to speak prophetically of the witness he has promised to deploy? I was just translating, I think it's the second to last statement of Hoshea's 11th chapter, right before the program began. And God said, because I'm God and not man, in spite of Yisrael's disgusting behavior, I just don't want to come back angry and frustrated. And the only way that God can come back and not be disgusted with his people is for us collectively to prevail, to have I'm going to use the term reasonable, to have a sufficient number, and more importantly, a quality of Yehudim and Israelites prepared to accept and respond appropriately to Yahweh upon his return. And that's why we're here. So the fact that he says, I'm not going to come back frustrated suggest that working together, that we will be successful. Aware of what God has repeatedly revealed, everyone who is listening to these words, you have a choice. You can capitalize upon what Yahweh has endeavored to bring to your attention, appreciative that he has deployed his Spirit to make all of this available for your benefit. You can read it, you can validate it, you can respond to it. Or you can discount these prophecies. You can ignore what God is offering. You can scoff at these words. You can choose to retreat to religious rhetoric, political platitudes. Continue as you and your people have been doing for the past, 3,000 years? And see if anything changes. Now, the master of metaphors has put them all into play. He has painted his final witness as a Nakri, which is an observant and responsive foreigner. Sometimes it's Nakri, which means my observant and responsive foreigner. Sometimes it's just Nakar, which would be without the my. A Choder, which is a sucker, which is growing from a fallen stump, the rootstock of a fallen stump. A Balak, which is a spiritual messenger. A Bashar, which is a human herald. A Zeroah, one who sows the seeds. And a Yada, which means to know. And now here in this statement, there is a kana, a stem, and unquenchable ka'ah, pitash, a glowing wick. By name or title, his role is to compose the nesh, which is a sign and banner that Yahweh has promised to prominently display upon his return. As a matter of fact, there is in the prophets, I don't know if this is Zechariah or in Malachi. I think it's Zechariah, though. Yahweh is speaking of the two witnesses, one of which is Eliah. He speaks of this giant banner that he gives the dimensions that is hovering overhead. And could well be what we're bringing in
interesting,
tonight.
Yes. Yeah.
In fact, if I were guessing, as much as I love Yashaya, and that's what we're citing right now, and it may be a big part of that, but also I've sent you the chapters so far on Hosea.
Yes.
And oh my goodness, are they ever biting, relevant, stinging, what God has to say about Yisrael and his relationship with them. It's enough to make you want to just cry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So, if there is someone else, Kirk, and we've always encouraged this, translating the prophet's pronouncements, who has done similarly, should there be 20, 200, or 2,000 witnesses engaged in calling Yahweh's people home, so much the better. But there were none, and now at least there is one. Now, that's not to suggest that this wick has any merit outside of this moment. He's not among the featured characters in Yahweh's story, nor is he a prophet. He isn't even a Yehud. And you certainly aren't either, Kirk.
No.
He does not want or expect any accolades, recognition, or responsibilities. Not now, not in the hereafter. He is simply a replacement player. Remember when the baseball had its strike, and they had the replacement players, and you probably couldn't come up with the name of a single one of them?
No.
That's what this individual. He is a replacement player. And the reason he is a replacement player is because the original cast is all out on strike.
True.
In heaven,
well put.
Fortunately, he will be one of many. So now, however, the role of the glowing wick is to introduce Israelites to Yahweh, to the Torah, to the Mikra, to the Berith, to Dod, the Son of God, the Messiah, Shepherd, and returning King. He is calling God's people home. At the very least, Yahweh's Witness wants you to be aware that God did not say, and I'm going to cite the King James Version, a bruised reed shall he not break, and the smoking flax he shall not quench. He shall bring forth judgment unto truth. Say what?
Okay.
Hey, but it was authorized.
Yeah, but it's all right about a king.
Yep. A bruised reed shall he not break, and a smoking flax shall he not quench. He shall bring forth judgment unto truth. Okay, I don't think so.
Okay.
He will not be restrained or incapacitated nor discouraged. Lo, ka'ah. He will not be apprehensive, controlled, or undermined, nor will he lose his intensity, nor lack for sufficient resources. Never holding back. But pretty good explanation of what we're doing here. Nor will his everlasting witness ever be effectively challenged. Wallo ranatz ad. Nor will his testimony be opposed, nor demeaned throughout the remainder of time, as he examines and establishes good judgment and sound decision-making within the land and upon the earth. And so in the coastlands the coastlands, which is the coastal regions, will long to inherit his Torah. Yeshaya, Isaiah 42:4. So, pretty straightforward. This individual that Yeshaya is speaking of, who Christians have decided is speaking of Jebus. Even Jebus is never named. And it would be, in my view, inappropriate to refer to the Passover lamb as a glowing wick. Heck, the Passover lamb had the nephesh, the soul of Yahweh. That makes him considerably more important than a glowing wick. This guy is a glowing wick. He's a stem. That's not Yosha. Clearly not Dod. Somebody much less important. And it can't be Yosha because nothing Yosha said can be verified. We don't have a single word he spoke reliably maintained in the language he spoke. Not one. So
very logical. Yeah.
So this individual who said he will not be restrained, incapacitated, or discouraged, clearly Yosha was discouraged. And what's the whole Gethsemane experience, you know? God, if this thing can pass, you know, give it to anybody else, you know, but your will, not mine. But oh my God, do I really have to do this? You know, I know that if it had been me, I'd say, you know, I'm out. You've asked too much.
Yeah, well,
but you know, fortunately, he had Yahweh's soul. So he will not be restrained, incapacitated. Last time I checked, the Passover lamb was incapacitated.
Pretty strange, wrapped up.
Pretty much incapacitated. This ain't talking about the Passover lamb. But he will not be restrained, incapacitated, or discouraged. Well, that really is an accurate assessment of what we're doing. Nor will his everlasting witness be challenged. You know, Kirk is, I think, 21, 22 books on the shelf now.
Yes.
Never had a single credible challenge to anything we've ever written.
I think about that often, that's true.
as he examines and establishes good judgment and sound decision-making within the land upon the earth. And so in the coastlands, they're going to long to inherit his Torah guidance. That's what we're here for. We want you to accept Yahweh's Torah. And to inherit the Torah means that you're among those on Yom Kippurim in your 6,000 Yah, whom Yahweh writes his Torah guidance.
In your heart, yes.
Yeah, right upon you. Yeah. Right integrated right into you. That's what it means to inherit, to receive
the Torah.
The Torah. Mm-hmm. And if you're a Yehudim, it's your birthright. So when you read this, it certainly seems that Yahweh is pleased with his witnesses' attitude and his tenacity. Now, God made it that way. I mean, he infused the spiritual energy, the courage, and the insights that he is now praising. So to some degree, God's saying, okay, I gave this guy enough spiritual insight, spiritual support, that it turned out pretty darn good.
Wow, we work well together. Yeah.
We do work well together. So, to a large degree, he's complimenting what he has enabled, but that's okay. I'm delighted.
You got to pick up and run with it.
What that means is we didn't get in the way, and that's plenty good enough. So God's obviously, in fact, no matter where you turn and you read about what God says about this last witness, he's pleased.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, I'm sitting here saying, oh, my God, I hope we don't disappoint him. We're so inadequate compared to what this task is. And he's saying, no, this is great. This is working out really well.
I say, please don't get sick.
So works for me. That's his view. You know, I do think to a large degree, and this is part of the thing for all of us, because God's children are bathed in light. They're adorned with this garment of light that makes us appear perfect before God's eyes. And our thoughts are transported through the set-apart Spirit, who polishes them up considerably. So from God's perspective, because all he can see of us is the best of us, filtered through the brilliance of the set-apart Spirit, we are looking really good. But that is really how it's working. But isn't that pretty cool? Because God is magnificent. He's brilliant. He is perfect. And so if he saw us for all that we are as opposed to the best of us, it would be pretty embarrassing. That's part of why the children of Israel said, okay, enough of that already. His voice is too piercing. His presence is too intrusive. Could you have him back away? And Moshe, can you interpret this for us? That's how they responded. And I would say that if God didn't have this approach, if he was, we're doing the best we can. We are really devoted to getting this right. Love Yahweh. But if God saw every flaw in us, I don't think we'd have the...
you ain't going to work with us.
Yeah, I just don't think we'd have what it takes to continue. It would be too embarrassing, you'd feel too vulnerable. But the very fact that God said, hey, listen, I think you're doing a great job. But it's, again, he's seeing it through the brilliance of the set-apart Spirit. That's the way it works, though, so that we can be relaxed and liberated and enthusiastic, knowing that what we're doing is being empowered by God's desire and his will through his Spirit. So this final flame will be obviously faint compared to the brilliance of Moshe and Dode, but that's appropriate because his task is to share their lives and their testimony. The story is based around them. Moreover, in these dark days glowing wick is sufficient. The witness will endure, and his testimony will be unchallenged because of his approach, wherein he encourages God's people to examine the Torah and then decide based on the evidence. Now, we have a number of options with the word, it's Aleph Yod, I. The most common definition is, as I shared it with you, coastlands, in addition to border region. I can also be translated as an inhabited area, alas, woe, or it can serve as a form of negation. It can even be an interrogative asking where, why, or for what reason something is being done. This is likely because the verbal root, expresses a desire, a preference, or a longing. Now, every time prophetically that I have read it seems to be addressing primarily the United States, but also the other countries along the coastlines of the major seas that the preponderance of Jews currently live. Now, if you look at the overwhelming majority of Jews, they live within 100 miles of the coast, particularly in Israel, where 45% of the world's Jewish population lives. They're all living within 100 miles of the coast. In the United States, because of California, Florida, and New York, the overwhelming percentage of Jews live within 100 miles of the coast. This is also true in France and Canada, the United Kingdom, Argentina, even in Russia, Germany, Australia, Brazil, and South Africa. Therefore, 14.4 million of the world's 15.2 million Jews have settled near the sea within these 11 nations, with 45% residing in Israel and 38% living in America.
You know, that's another. Let me just say this. That's another thing you do that I've never seen. You literally take the time when you get a verse like that, and you've done all this translating, and then you sit there and you actually look up all this to verify is this translation correct? And that's where I'd find them. And if that's not where I find them, then I maybe have to relook at the translation. But you've done research on everything like this, and that is commendable. I mean, thanks. I go back sometimes and look at it and go,
because the primary definition of I is coastlands.
Yeah,
and he would say, well, why would he speak in this context of coastlands unless the prophecy was speaking of where most of his people would reside prior to his return? And so if you're going to render it under the primary definition, which seems a little odd just by itself, then I think it requires us to go the next step and to say, okay, if I render it coastlines, is it an accurate depiction of what has occurred? Oh, we find out that, it's a really accurate depiction, because it describes 14.4 million of the world's 15.2 million Jews.
That's big number. Yeah, big percentage.
Big percentage.
Cool.
It is perplexing that Christians believe that this speaks of their Jesus when they have sought to do away with the very thing being inherited, Yahweh's Torah. How can this be Jesus if the thing you're going to inherit is the Torah? I mean, it's stunning how stupid you have to be religious. The thing that is being inherited is the Torah, the very things that Christianity requires to be annulled, to be replaced by their New Testament. So guess what, folks? He ain't talking about Jesus or Christianity, but somebody who isn't afraid to tell the truth. Now, one of the reasons so many people are confused is that their Bible translations, or I should say Babel, translations are bewildering. We quoted the King James version a moment ago. How about this one? He shall not fail nor be discouraged till he have set judgment in the earth. I would have thought it would have been has, but nonetheless, that is a quote. Mm-hmm. He shall not fail nor be discouraged till he have set judgment in the earth. Now, I've never been to the center of the earth, so I can't tell you what's there, but I can tell you for certain that Yosha didn't go there, and I'm not going there. As for have set judgment, no. Our goal is to make good decision-making possible, which means you have to do several things. One is you have to provide accurate information. Mm-hmm. The second thing is you have to provide perspective to help folks understand the context in which things are being said, and then to make the proper connections to understand so that you can make good decisions. Judgment is of God, way above our pay grade. Helping you make a good decision, we can do that. But this goes on to say, he shall not fail nor be discouraged till he have set judgment on the earth, and the isles will wait for his law. Mm-hmm. There are no isles. There are no isles in Israel.
No. No.
And to call the country with the second most number of Jews an isle would be...
It's a little strange, don't you think?
Yeah, this is the point that you were making. If you're going to translate something a certain way, you ought to look it up and see,
does it make sense?
That doesn't make any sense. And they shall wait for his law. Why would you wait for something that we were given 2,000 or 3,400 years ago? What are you waiting for?
Yeah, pick it up.
It was given to us 3,450 years ago. What are you waiting for? And by the way, Torah is based upon the Hebrew verb yara, and yara means a source from which guidance, teaching, direction, and instructions flow. It does not mean law. So they got everything wrong. The New American Standard Bible, which claims to be literal, says, he will not be disheartened or crushed until he has established justice on the earth. And the coastlines will wait expectingly for his law. How can you claim to be literal if you don't know Torah means guidance? If you can't take what is one of the single most important titles from God, and you just can't render it as a title. T-O-W-R-A-H, Torah. What in the hell is wrong with you folks that claim to be theologians, claim to be presenting God's word, and you can't write God's words? That you have to replace them with the stupidity of law. It says Torah. And he is not establishing justice. Not his job. Yosha most certainly didn't do it. Jesus didn't do it. Moshe didn't do it. Doe didn't do it. There is no justice. And if you think this was your Jesus, why isn't there justice on the earth? God. The Nilt, the New Living Translation, which is a novel written by Christian theologians. It reads, he will not falter or lose heart until justice prevails throughout the earth. Even distant lands beyond the sea will wait for his instruction. Good God! It's not his instruction. If you thought this was Jesus, then it says Torah, and you're screwed. Because if Jesus is providing the Torah, he certainly couldn't have been establishing a new religion based upon a New Testament that annuls the Torah. So your own translation destroys the myth that this spoke of your guy. And I will tell you, the actual guy that is speaking of, he doesn't care, and you shouldn't care about his instructions. I gave instructions to my tile layers today. You don't want to hear it. It's just, you don't want to hear it. It's meaningless. My instructions are useless. It's not my instructions. It's Yahweh's Torah that we are teaching. That's what you have a chance to inherit. The JPS, the Jewish Publication Society, they wrote, "He shall not fail nor be crushed till he have set." Well, there's the have again. What's wrong with has? Until he have set. They have. He has. It's not that complicated. Subject, verbs, they got to agree. Till he have set the right in the earth. The right in the earth.
Well, the right. The right in the earth.
What is the right? I mean, I know what's right. But the last thing, it's the old sign, I finally got my shit together, but I forgot where I put it. We want you to be right. God wants you to be right. But when you're right, keep it in your head. Don't go plant it someplace. And the isles shall wait for his teaching. There are no isles, folks, but to their credit. To their credit. Even the JPS knew that Torah means teaching. So why do Jews refer to it as the law?
For Shabat.
All right, so I don't claim that my translations are perfect. I just will claim that they're easily verified and that they are more accurate. They're consistent with Yahweh's words. This is what I am convinced God wanted us to know. It says, "He will not be restrained. He will not be incapacitated nor discouraged. Nor will his everlasting witness ever be challenged. As he examines and encourages good judgment and sound decision-making within the land and upon the earth, and therefore they will long to inherit his Torah teaching and guidance." What a difference.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is just so much better. Now, this statement is also a mortal blow to Judaism. It is Yahweh's Torah. It's not their Talmud, which is being restored to prominence. Moreover, Hashem has a name. Thus says the Almighty, Yahweh, who created the universe and the spiritual realm, and then expanded them while spreading out the material realm along with the earth and that which is produced within it, who provides a conscience for the family upon it, in addition to the spirit who walk with her. Wow, Yashayah, Isaiah 42:5. Now, that's not exactly third grade curriculum there. You pretty much got to be with it. I don't know if it's graduate school, but you got to be with it to understand what God is trying to convey here. So, thus says the Almighty, who, by the way, has a name. His name is Yahweh. Yod, He, Wah, He, 4 vowels, Yahweh. Mm-hmm. Who created bara, who conceived and brought into existence, uniquely fashioning and forming for the first time the universe and the spiritual realm, ha-shamayim, and then expanded them, wa-natah, enlarged them, extending them by inflating their size. Boy, that is really true. Now, It's true both, by the way, of the six-dimensional universe that surrounds us. It is not only expanding, but it's expanding much faster than the speed of light. And it's really big. The new telescope they just sent up, it took a picture, the first picture. And the first picture from the telescope. Now, this telescope is actually in a solar orbit. It's much further out than the moon. They didn't put this thing in Earth orbit. They put it in solar orbit. And the first picture shows a slice of the universe. So if you were to put your hand, extend your hand all the way out, and your index finger all the way out as far as you can from you, and you were to imagine a grain of sand on the tip of your finger. That is the full scale of this picture. So the telescope focused on the amount of sky that would be equivalent to the size of a grain of sand on the tip of your finger. And within that scope, there were, looks like in the picture, many hundreds, maybe 1,000 galaxies, each with 100,000, maybe 1 billion, could have even been, the average galaxy seems to have 100 billion stars. So in a grain of sand, as we look into the blackness of the sky, there are 1,000 galaxies, perhaps averaging 100 billion stars apiece. Think of the enormity of that. And if that's that one grain of sand, and we're only looking at our tiny little slice of sky, imagine how much is really out there. It's just so enormous that the idea that this thing came from nothing and that it didn't have a creator and a plan is just utter nonsense. Yahweh created it. And he created it to be magnificent. And he created it to be magnificent for a single reason. And that is so that we could ponder the enormity of it all and say, look how magnificent God has to be. Look at what he is offering to us. So that when he gets his primary desire, which is to raise us as his children, to empower us, to perfect us, to make us immortal, to adopt us, to enrich us, to enlighten us, and we go on voyages of discovery and get to explore all of the vastness of the universe that God created and the life that he conceived in it, that we will have enough to see and learn and explore to fill eternity. That's what that picture of a speck of sand conveys to us. So thus is the Almighty Yahweh, who created the universe and the spiritual realm, and then expanded them while spreading out the material realm along with the earth and that which is produced within it. Who provided a conscience, a nesalma. It is the greatest gift that God could possibly give us. A nesalma. It's the one thing that makes Adam different than all of the humans outside of the garden,
creatures, yeah.
And that makes us different than the animals. It gives us the opportunity to think our way to God. It is that unique human capacity to reason, to use our nephesh soul to observe and respond to stimuli and the outside universe around us in a way now that usually our nesama is reasoned and rational, judgmental, discerning, discriminating. The nesama gives us the ability to be just, to be accurate, to be correct, to be right, to be fair, to be moral. All of these things that virtually every human chooses to forfeit. What a gift. For la ha'am, the family that is upon it, in addition to, he gave us the Spirit, the Ruach, the maternal presence of God's nature, to all of those who journey through life with her. Pretty profound.
Yes.
From this, we can be assured, 1, God is Yahweh's title. 2, Yahweh is God's name.
Mm-hmm.
3, he speaks directly through his prophets in first person. 4, God created the universe, which is expanding because Yahweh initiated the Big Bang, profusion of light. 5, God gave mankind a nesama, a conscience, so that we would have the capacity to reason, to think rationally, and thereby be able to relate to him. 6, the Spirit of God is offered to family members who use their nesama to travel through life, enjoying an association with her. Underlying these facts, there is an amazing story being expressed at a very high level. The one thing that makes humans distinct from other animals is our nesama, our conscience.
Mm-hmm.
This God-given capacity to think rationally and distinguish between right and wrong, good and bad, truth and lies, was placed within us so that upon reading the Torah and prophets, we would come to know Yahweh and understand what he is offering and expecting in return. You want to know Yahweh? Read his Torah. You want to know what's going to happen? Read the prophets. You want to know what God is offering and expecting in return? Study his teaching and guidance. Now, pursuant to this prophetic declaration, our nesama, our conscience, is the very thing that enabled humankind to recognize that the universe was created in the manner Yahweh tests. When the redshift of starlight was discovered by Hubble, we came to realize, I guess in the 1950s, we came to realize that the universe had a beginning and that it was created. This scientific affirmation of God's testimony should have caused smart people to acknowledge that the Bereth Genesis accounting was correct. But instead, failing to use their nesama conscience appropriately, they suggested otherwise by explaining that an ancient profusion of energy cooled as it expanded to produce matter, which demonstrated that they had explained away the need for a creator. The secular can be as senseless as the sectarian. Now, as it pertains to our composition as humans, our basar, physical bodies, are carbon-based, formed out of the residue of dying and exploding stars. But without a nesama soul, there is nothing interactive particles in a sea of water. Therefore, while the three-dimensional language of DNA instructs the elements which comprise our bodies on how to form cells and function in support of the entire organism, without consciousness, a nephesh soul, that language is no longer read and the body dies. Further, it is our nephesh consciousness which gives animals, such as humans, the ability to observe and respond to our environment. The bashar is the computer and the nefesh is the operating system, while the nesama serves as an advanced program.
That's a good analogy.
Now, it is this amalgamation of stardust comprising our bashar, physical bodies, orchestrated by the language of Delet Nun Elah.
Very good.
Yeah. Animated by our nefesh consciousness, which, when operating as designed, can identify and accept Yahweh's Ruach spirit. In this way, a decaying bashar and a mortal nefesh using the nesama conscience can be transformed into or light energy, becoming immortal. The means to eternal life, to being improved to perfection, our adoption into God's family, followed by the expansive experience of being enlightened and empowered, enriched and emancipated, occurs by design through Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, leading to Shabuah. Now, that is the story, I think, that Yahweh wants those of us with a functioning nesama to appreciate, to capitalize upon. Therefore, his accounting, much like the prophecy, was revealed for the last generation, for the remnant of Yisrael, such that open-minded and receptive Yehudim, Jews, would choose to reconcile their relationship with Yahweh and come back home before it is too late. And think, the Creator who orchestrated and conveyed all of this was able to communicate it to you using a bashar human herald to share what are essentially very profound insights that ought to garner your attention, consideration. And they say miracles aren't possible. Well, having used his nefesh and the Sama correctly, and infused with the Ruach, it is as this Bashar has explained. I am Yahweh, God says. I have invited you, calling you out by name, to meet with you, Kara Ata, with the means to be right and to be vindicated, Ba Sadak. And I will firmly grasp you by the hand, empowering and strengthening you. And I will protect and preserve you. Then I will give to you accordingly a covenant, one for the family, as a light for the people of other races and places, to open the eyes which have been blinded, to bring out, liberating those who are bound and confined from houses of captivity and control, and those who live in darkness and confusion. Isaiah 42:7. Now, clearly, this is Yahweh speaking. It is what Yahweh intends. This is not what Yosha accomplished.
No.
In fact, based upon his people's response to Yosha, exactly the opposite occurred. So Yahweh is speaking of a time before he returns. And he says, one of the single most important things that you can recognize about his return, maybe the single most, I don't think there's anything that competes with this. I am Yahweh. I am Yahweh. It's God's name. I am Yahweh. Until you acknowledge, accept, and proclaim that God is Yahweh, you are excluded from his family. You are excluded from heaven. There is no possibility of eternal life. You are not going to get anywhere near him. It is a prerequisite. We must know and declare and respect that God's name is Yahweh. It's one of the greatest crimes ever perpetrated by anyone, and it is a crime that is continually perpetrated against Jews by rabbis. The removal of God's name from his testimony. They might as well call him what's his name. Because they don't know it, they don't say it, they don't respect it, they don't use it. God uses it. His prophets use it. All of those who know him use it. I am Yahweh. I don't know if there is a more important verb than kara. I rather like yada because it means to know, to understand, to perceive, to acknowledge. And there's a lot of nouns, proper nouns, and common nouns that are exceedingly important. But can there be a verb more important than kara? Here Yahweh says that I have invited you. God has given us an invitation to meet with him. He has called us out by name. He has summoned you. He is welcoming you. He's encouraging you to read and recite his Torah. This is important for a number of reasons. One is that Yahweh is reaching out to us. We would have no way of knowing him if he didn't do this on our behalf. Second, everyone that God talks about in his Torah and prophets, he reached out to. He introduced himself to them. We don't make first contact. He does. Third, Kara is the basis of Mikra. The 7 annual meetings, Pesach, Matzah, Bekurim, Shavua, Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukkah, are all Mikra, the plural Mikra. That is the path to God. It is the means to receive the benefits of the covenant. So I am Yahweh. I have Kara'ata. I have invited you to meet. And I am providing you the means to be right and to be vindicated, Sadak. The one thing that distinguished Dode from all others. He was right. And to be part of the covenant family, to enter heaven, to form a relationship with Yahweh, one must be right. You don't have to be good. You don't have to believe anything. Certainly don't need to pray. Most certainly don't need to worship. But you got to be right. And right about the big picture. What do the Mikra represent? What are the terms and conditions of the covenant? What is Yahweh's intent for his people and for us? What is God expecting from us? What is he offering to us? These things we must be right. Fortunately, it's an open book test. So we have no excuse. Vindication is the result of being right. God says, I will firmly grasp you by the hand. You look at Yahweh's name, the first letter, the Yod, is an arm coming down and a forearm reaching out with an open hand. God is saying, I will firmly grasp you by the hand, which means I'm going to lift you up. I'm going to empower you. I'm going to strengthen you. I'm going to teach you to walk. I'm going to raise you. We're going to journey through space and time together, side by side. I'm going to grasp you by the hands. What could be better than a father lifting up their child? Can you imagine walking hand in hand with Yahweh? I do every day. When you translate his words and listen to what he has to say. His goal is to strengthen us. It's why this idea of worshiping God and lifting God up in prayer and all of this sort of thing is just so mind-numbingly stupid. Even if you knew God, Even if you got right about him, you can't lift him up. But he can lift us up.
Yes, he can.
I will protect and preserve you. That is what a father does. I'm going to keep you safe, sparing you, keeping you out of harm's way. And I will give to you accordingly the covenant. We can be part of God's family. It is our gift. It's a gift for the family. It is a light, a brilliant luminary for people of other races and places. Thank goodness, or we wouldn't be able to participate. But the covenant is for all people. First, to the descendants of Jacob, but then to all the rest of us. The intent is to open eyes which have been blinded, to bring out liberating those who are bound and confined, i.e. the religious, from houses of activity and control, which is what religion and politics do, and those who live in the darkness and the confusion. Now, based on this declaration, we can conclude a number of things. Now, the last time I think I shared 6. I think this time I have a few more than that. First, Yahweh wants us to know his name and to realize that he is the reason all of these things are possible. 2, God is inviting his people to meet with him and engage in a relationship, calling us out of this world to welcome us into his family. 3, his teaching enables us to be right. And when we're right, we can be vindicated. When correct, acquitted. 4, by grasping our Father's hand, which is being extended to us, we are strengthened, we're empowered, we're protected, we're uplifted by him. 5, Yahweh is committed to protecting his children, what fathers do, keeping us out of harm's way so that we can branch out and grow. 6, his gift to his creation is his covenant. It's the most valuable gift in the universe. 7, its children, the covenant's children, are empowered to serve as a light in the midst of a very dark world. 8, while God does not want his people to emulate the Gentiles, we are asked to enlighten them such that the blind might see what we have come to know. The 9th point is that the Almighty advocates freedom, while man controls by confusion, recognizing that the unenlightened are more easily pacified. You can be really aggressive with God. He's not trying to pacify you. You can wrestle with him. You can challenge him. You can test him. God didn't mind all that stuff. It's engaging. I'd be respectful in doing it, but feel free to do so. He doesn't want you pacified. He wants you to be enlightened, and so that you understand. God's idea is to mitigate the differences between us, rather than, and religion. God's way out there, he's really big, sits on the throne, you got to get down on your knees and, and praise him. God's idea is, I want to perfect you and enrich you and empower you to the point that we are very similar. God wants to give us everything we need to be so similar to him that we can spend eternity together.
Yeah.
And the bigger the gap between us, the less pleasant it is for Yahweh. The closest thing that we humans have to an animal that we can relate to and that can relate to us is a dog. I have 2 of them, and right now they're both laying here on my feet. wonderful companions. I walk out the door and their eyes are on me like a laser. They're reading my expression, following my eyes. They want to know what we're going to go do. They can't wait to be together, to explore together. And that's about as far as we can go to have a relationship. You know, I'm not going to have a relationship with a snake or with a lizard or with a centipede or with a slug. It's just not going to happen. And so dogs, in Hebrew, koleb, all heart, are just the most similar being in terms of a companion being to us. But that's about as far as we can go. So the more the dog is capable of understanding our words and can communicate back to us and enjoys our company as we enjoy their company, the more the relationship becomes mutual and exciting and rewarding. And so the more God can bridge this gap between who he is and who we are, which means since he's not going to diminish himself, that he has to hugely increase who we are in terms of our capabilities. That's the whole purpose of the covenant. The purpose of the covenant is to enrich and empower and enlighten us, to liberate us, so that we become very similar to Yahweh. Because the more similar we become to God, the more fun it will be for both of us. Now, the reason that Yahweh deployed his 7 Ruach spirits to encourage and enlighten, to elucidate and embolden, to educate and empower his Choder and Nakar and Malak and Bashar and Zeroah, this Yada, is because the Nabi named Yashayas, Yahweh Saves, revealed a prophetic communication between El, God, and his Am family, which is vital to their continued existence. Yes, Yahweh is God's name. Knowing it, accepting it, cherishing it, and using it is the first step towards reconciliation. Now, while the formation of the Breath Covenant is the reason the universe was created and life was conceived, and our association is only possible when we accept Yahweh's Kara invitation, God is Kara calling us out of the Eretz, the material realm of man, unto Shamaim. That's the spiritual realm that he calls home. Those who reach this destination are Kara, welcomed into God's presence. Having Kara read and recited the Torah, the Nabi, the Mizmor, therein we learn that Kara is indeed the verbal root of Yahweh's Mikre, which serves as the means to this wonderful resort. You know, I was translating a portion earlier today of Hosha, and got to say, you know, in his youth, I loved Yisrael. And as I was withdrawing Yisrael from human religious and political oppression, I viewed him as my son. Isn't that amazing? So God is clearly saying that what my intent is to create a father-child relationship with we humans. And that father and child relationship would be based on love. That was his intent. Of course, his people did everything they could to screw that up. But God's not going to be frustrated. That was his intent. That is his intent. And so I can assure you, when he returns, what he is going to do is to reestablish and restore that covenant relationship. Don't have to be the smartest guy in the universe to know that. Because what did God say?
He can make you smarter.
Through Yirmiyah, I'm going to return, and when I return, I'm going to restore and reaffirm the covenant relationship with Yisrael and Yehudah.
Yes.
And I'm going to accomplish that by placing my Torah guidance right inside of them. That's the plan. And when we have the Torah guidance inside of us, we are now educated to the point that we can think and respond like God. Communicate with God on the same level. If
you still have
you're
free will.
imbued with His teaching, you can teach. If you're imbued with His guidance, you can guide.
Make great choices.
Yeah. In the process, those who, Yada, transition from ignorance to knowledge, from believing to understanding, and become Sadak right regarding who Yahweh is and what He's offering. Being correct regarding God is the catalyst to our Sadak vindication. Now, this is really a brilliant insight that Yeshaya is providing. It's a shame that so many people have misappropriated this to create illusions as opposed to simply considering the words and capitalizing upon them. Once our relationship with Yahweh is reconciled, He can grasp hold of our hand so that we can walk side by side, so that He can lead and Shazak support us, so that He can affirm His love for us and raise us at His side. And it's a huge part of how we can become so comfortable in all of this. Now, here, Kirk, we're reading about this job that Yahweh said that we were going to do on behalf of His people, and He revealed this 2,700 years ago. And in any other situation, I'd be intimidated to be shaking in my boots and said, no, I ain't going to do it. No, He's God. I'm not kidding. I can't live up to that standard. But because He's Dad is naturally predisposed to seeing the best in the kid. And even when the kid stumbles, it isn't Dad's job to kick the kid while he's down, but instead to pick the kid up and say, hey, let's do it again. This time I'll hold your hand. When you have that kind of support, when you have that kind of love, you can be bold. So long as you're enthusiastically devoted to the Father's business, Dad's going to do everything He can to make certain together we succeed. And no matter what we do under those circumstances, we're going to make a positive difference. Whether it's 100, 1,000, 10,000, or 1,000,000. We finally choose to listen to the end. Go ahead.
Is the reason that so few will actually make it to this point where they'll accept, they'll choose to have a relationship with Yahweh? You know, the downside of having a relationship with Him if He were to prematurely turn us into light or someone into light, a light being, He can't get rid of you. I mean, get rid of you in a black hole. But I mean, how horrible would that be? So I mean, He's got an awfully good weeding out process to find out who really likes it.
Yeah, let's say that Yahweh said, I'm gonna change the game. I'm gonna eliminate free will. I'm not going to speak through people because He tried speaking directly to us, and His people said, no, that's scary. We don't want any more of that. And so He said, fine, I get it. I'll filter what I have to say through people so that it can resonate more clearly and so that you're not intimidated. You can listen to the words, you can contemplate the words without being intimidated. So let's just say that God says, okay, I'm going to dispense with all that. I'm going to go back to not only speaking directly to you, I'm going to put everything that I have ever wanted you to know inside of you so that it becomes the operating system of your life. You can't deny it. You can't walk away from it. You can't change it. It is your life's program.
Okay, now no free will now.
Wow. No free will at that point.
No. No love then.
And no opportunity to make the decision to be observant and to grow and to figure it out. At that point, you know it all.
Mm-hmm.
The last 21 years of my life has been to learn.
Yeah, growth.
And to share. What if everybody had a plug-in of the Torah, what would be the purpose of learning? What would be the purpose of sharing? What would be the purpose in choosing?
And no relationships at all.
Right.
Yeah. It has to work this way. It's not cruel. It has to work this way.
But it has to be put inside of us once we've made the decision. Listen, at this point, my decision is overwhelmingly.
You're all in.
I'm all in. And so I've actually, and you have, jumped the gun on this. The Torah is my operating system now. I have swallowed it whole. It is what guides my life. It is the dominant force of my life. So I've already integrated it. But that's this Torah that he shared through Moshe that I am trying to help his people understand. Once we are transformed into light beings and that we are elevated to 7 dimensions, the universe is so big and there's so much going on, Yahweh at that point does have to program us such that we can enjoy the universe without doing something. So, for example, I am certain that there's life on those other planets because God loves life. And he wouldn't have created the language to replicate life if he didn't want many iterations of it. So we're going to go off and we're going to see life on other planets. There are going to have to be some rules as to what we should and we should not do. I mean, the first thing you're going to do is see something you think is fun, and you're going to want to go and communicate with it and interact with it. But how much of that can you do before you're harmful to the organism? So we're going to have to learn that. I want to go and explore galaxies, but at the center of a galaxy is a black hole. And so, not a good thing to get trapped in. So how do you get to explore while enjoying
safely, yes,
everything, but yet not subjecting yourself or anyone else to harm? So we're going to have a different form of Torah guidance inside of us, integrated into us. And then we'll learn by exploring with Yahweh the universe that he has created, and probably have the opportunity to even be creative ourselves. That's the offer. But between now and then, it's the right way. It becomes the filter. Do you care enough about coming to know God that you're willing to listen to him? Are you willing to reject the influences that are counter to him, the religious and political influences, conspiratorial influences? Are you willing to walk away from those things and walk to Yahweh along the path that he has provided? Right now, it's a choice. Right now, it's unrequited love. God loves his people, but they do not love him in return. But Kirk, that's going to change. It has changed already for a significant number of us. And it's going to change for even more. God's saying, I'm not coming back disappointed. He's going to return to his people pleased. Kippurim is the ultimate day of celebration. The relationship's going to be reconciled. And the thing that we just have to be careful of is not slathering God with human characteristics. And from a human point of view, we want there to be a big crowd. We want when Yahweh shows up that every Jew is there exclaiming his name and well equipped with the knowledge to be right about him and to accept him. That's what we want. But that's not what God has ever sought. You know, God did not say that I created 1,000 Adams in the garden. Not even 100. Not even 5. He was happy with the one. And he didn't create Yahowah for himself. He created Yahowah for Adam. So, one was enough. One was enough. And if one was enough, God's not going to be impressed with having 1,000,000. So our view of all of this has to change. There is no way that God's going to want the Christian and 2.5 billion of them, or the Muslim and 1.6 billion of them. He was happy with one. With Noah, he was happy with 8. With Abraham, it was he and Sarah, and then they added they added Yishak. And then, with Jacob, there were 12 sons, 2 wives. God's never really been interested in numbers. But the problem was that you still got to have one for a relationship.
Yeah, even those dwindled.
Better part of the last 2,500 years, he says there were none. And it is the day of reconciliations, which is plural, so there must be some, and there are now a significant number of Yehudim that have chosen to part of his covenant family. So that's what we're about. It's irrelevant to our calling to try to project the number of people who are going to return. All we can say is if you're listening, someone has shared this with you. If you've been given an introduction to God, capitalize upon it. Don't do it for us. Do it for yourself. Do it for those you love. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Do it because you've come to respect Yahweh and all he has done for you. So this is really a very graphic presentation, Kirk, of Yahweh's nature, his gift of ahab, of love, of support, of Torah guidance, of protection. It is symbolic of the Bereth covenant. The beneficiaries of Pesach and Matzah are Bakorim. We're adopted into God's family. We are transformed into light, or in the process of becoming like our Father, perfect, immortal. This, our God's greatest gift, his Bereth, is for Goyim and Yehudim, for all people. Initially offered to Abraham and Sarah, consistent with their varied ethnicity, it is now open to every race in every place on earth. And as with the whole of Yahweh's prophetic revelations, his words are intended to open the eyes of those who have been blinded by religion and politics, patriotism and conspiracy. It is time to emancipate those these human contrivances have sought to control, to enable the open-minded to emerge out of the darkness and come into the light. The prophetic revelation of Yahshua has been available for 2,700 years. And yet, this is the first time we are witnessing what Yahweh intended for his people to see. Initially, Jews were too busy fighting among themselves, either incorporating Greek influences during the Maccabean period, to encouraging the Roman invasions during the time of Akiba. From there, the rabbis were too preoccupied with establishing Judaism and compiling the Talmud to control their brethren to focus on what Yahshua revealed, and ultimately Yahshua's message became too counter to their religion to even consider. With Jews looking elsewhere, Christians were beguiled to believe that these prophecies spoke of their misnomer, Jesus Christ. They built their religion upon this faulty edifice, corrupting God's message to the point that it was no longer of any value. This misappropriation irritated the rabbis all the more, but rather than disapproving the Christian apologists, they simply retreated from Yahweh. Centuries later, predicated as predicted, God brought a goy into the fold, an observant foreigner, and turned him into a witness on behalf of his blinded people. I guess, Kirk, and the land of the blind, the one-eyed man has some merit. With the insights provided by the prophets and their words and Yahweh's Spirit, God is elucidating those whose eyes are open, leading them out of the darkness of religion and into the light of the relationship he intended. So we'll end this on Yahweh's next statement through the prophet Yahshua, Isaiah 42:8.
Okay.
I am Yahweh. That is my name. My manifestation of power and significant status, my rewarding presence and honorable stature, I will never transfer to another, to an estranged man or God, to anyone who is different in any way, or my adoration and appreciation, my renown or reputation to representations of God's. To know Yahweh, to engage in a relationship with him, to speak for him, and to be with him, we must know, openly acknowledge, and confidently express his name. I am Yahweh. That is my name. Well, pretty hard to refute that.
Now, raise the focus.
Yeah, that means that his name is not Jesus. His name is not Christ. His name is not Allah. His name is not the name. His name is not the Lord. But what name? But one name. Only one name. Many titles, many attributes, but one name. It is always and will always be Yahweh. And yet, Kirk, you could read every page ever written by the rabbis, and you will never find that name expressed. You could listen to their every sermon, and you'll never hear it said. I am Yahweh. That is my name. You could read the entirety of the Christian New Testament. You'll never see that. Never once. You could read the Zohar. You will not find it. You could read the Quran. You will not find it. There are many things that Yahweh's testimony have in common. But the single most important of them is Yahweh's name. If you're reading something purports to be from God and it does not include Yahweh's name, it is not from God. It is a fraud. I am Yahweh. That is my name. And it is our goal for you to Yada Yahowah. Well, Kirk, it's been my pleasure to be with you. It's been a fact-filled day. It's I feel like I'm getting a PhD in Yahology every time we read anything Yahshua has to say. He was clearly, he's clearly brilliant. I don't think there was anybody who could compete with Yahshua's brilliance as a prophet. There, Hosea was the most emotional of them. He'll bring you to tears. Yeah. But Yahshua will stimulate your mind, and boy, we have been the beneficiaries today, this evening. Happy Shabbat to one and all. Look forward to being with you next week, and never forget, Yahweh is God's name. May Yahweh bless. Good night.
Shabbat shalom. Good night.